ago, there was a company who sponsored lunch, and certain people were so offended that they refused to eat it. But it's worth noting that that company has continued to come every year, has continued to participate every year. So our next speaker, I was on a panel with him early last year, and I went into the panel prepared to be very skeptical. I came out of the panel convinced that although change doesn't happen quickly, that this particular company had genuine agents of change within it who were working very hard and actually having a positive effect. He has a degree in cognitive science, and he currently runs the Linux and open source strategy at Microsoft. Please welcome Sam Ramji.
So how's the sound? Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here with you. Today I'm going to talk about opening a new chapter. I should say the next chapter in Microsoft's relationship with open source communities around the world. To do that, I want to go into the context of how we see waves of change as the history of the industry has progressed. Looking at the era 1995 to 2005, entering that time frame, most users' experience with software was applications on specific devices, usually PCs. And then the internet came, changed everything, changed the way that we saw machines, changed the way that we saw interaction occur. But going from static web pages to full web applications where users could begin to interact, input new data. Something important is missing from this picture of the most important platform strategy trends in that era. And that is open source. At this conference today, we're celebrating 10 years of open source. It's not that source code sharing and source code availability weren't available long before that. However, that's the time when Eric S. Raymond, Denise Cooper, and a number of others first coined the term. Like the ability to Google, the creation of the term open source is a semantic handle to a rich cognitive context. And once we have a word by which we can take a whole context around, we all get smarter. In 1995, Microsoft was written off by many as the company that had missed the internet. At that time, I too held that belief. I was competing with Microsoft at the time. Today in 2005, nobody would say that's the case. Internet technologies are at the core of all of our leading products and part of how we think about the fundamental architecture of the platform. Looking at the following 10 years, we see other critical trends. We see software plus services. Services hosted behind firewalls offering new value to devices, whether they're phones, PCs, tablets, netbooks, laptops. We think that trend will continue for the long term. We see companies like Salesforce building client platforms as opposed to relying strictly on a browser. So we see the magic of software coming between both software and services. We've also seen the rise of the programmable internet, the ability to make new applications easily composed out of existing ones, finally giving truth to the long-held lie of reuse. Remember C++ libraries and the reuse we were going to get out of that. And then finally, open source. We see open source as a set of beliefs, concepts, and practices that have changed the industry and will be here for the long term. But open source is not about talk, it's about action. So what actions have we taken? We've built cross-platform virtualization and systems management for Linux. We work with the Samba team to deliver new licensing that enables them to have the specifications they need, and joint testing in our facilities in our Cambridge lab to improve interoperability. I have to thank Mike Schempfer for my t-shirt that I'm wearing today. We've done technical support and built Windows Media Player support for Firefox. We've worked with a range of Apache Software Foundation projects, including Access, HTTPD, APR, Jakarta to improve the performance, manageability of those applications on Windows. We've helped MySQL integrate with Visual Studio. We've made PHP a flagship feature of the Windows Server 2008 operating system. This required fundamental reengineering in collaboration with PHP engine developers in the community, as well as Andy Goodmans, one of the co-founders of the language. John Lamb is here in the audience. Those of you who attended his sessions know that Iron Ruby is an open source licensed implementation of Ruby. It's a leading Microsoft open source project, as is IronPython. Both IronPython, led by Jim Huguenin, and Iron Ruby have already been ported to Linux. I think it's a clear demonstration that the source and the intellectual property is freely available and open. As a longtime Java developer, I'm pleased to say that we're continuing our support for engineers at JBoss and in the Jakarta project to ensure great Java experiences regardless of platform choice. And finally, we are just beginning our work with the Eclipse Foundation, currently supporting the SWT team in building Windows Vista support and working with Project Higgins to ensure a secure, open identity metasystem so that everyday users know what kind of data about themselves that a website is asking for in a clear visual metaphor. In this process, I and my team have gotten to interact with extraordinary individuals. I've named a few of them. You know Jeremy Allison, you know Andrew Tridgell, you know Mike Schrepfer, you know Mike Shaver, you know Brendan Ike, you know a range of the people that we work with Denise Cooper, with Cliff Schmidt, Brian Bellendorf. In this process, I've heard a lot. Much of it won't surprise you, but this experience has acted as a listening tour for me. Here's what I've heard. I want to know that Microsoft is serious about open source. I think the only way to judge this is based on behavior. I'm going to call out the behaviors that I've committed to and that we've executed over the last year. We submitted our licenses to the OSI. We had a choice. We didn't have to do that. But we chose to submit both the licenses and to submit as a company to the governance of the OSI board. We gave up a little sovereignty in order to improve the governance of the open source definition. And in the process of working with the OSI, who we're humble to and we're grateful for the approval of the Microsoft public license and the Microsoft reciprocal license, we learned a lot. And in fact, as recently as a month ago, there's a project called Sandcastle. Has anybody heard of Sandcastle? There was a project on Codeplex that was written by Microsoft engineers. It was published under the MSPL, however, it was binary only. There was no source code. When the issue came up, and again, thanks to the contacts I've made in the community, I was unaware of this project. Within a day of being notified, I had the Codeplex team pull the project from the site because open source is about the source. You can't call yourself open source and just ship binary code. Now the good news is that the Sandcastle team chose to respect Microsoft open source policy. They chose to respect the design and the intent behind the MSPL. And 2 weeks later, they published their source code, so they're back on Codeplex. Most recently, I've had a conversation with Andy Oliver, who is the creator and the maintainer of Apache Poi. Apache Poi is an Apache-licensed top-level project of the Apache Software Foundation. It's a Java implementation of Microsoft Office binary formats. We had started to contribute support for OpenXML to Apache Poi, and Andy was concerned that there may not be all of the rights needed. So we expanded and clarified the ability of the Poi team to be able to use all the document format specifications for all the binary formats as well as future formats. Second thing I've heard is I want it to be simple. Now as developers, we write source code with other people so that we can experience the great feel of collaboration, we can write great software, we can learn, we can be on the edge, but also we want to be able to have as many people as possible use our software. So expanding the innovation, expanding the powerful features and capabilities of open source technologies to every user is critical. So to that end, we've focused on PHP support on IIS and we'll continue to improve those capabilities. We've also engineered support for Linux on Hyper-V, Microsoft's next generation hypervisor. We've also worked with the Apache Axis and Axis 2 teams and our colleagues at WSO2, a Sri Lankan company that is a commercial agent around the Access 2 project, including some of their core committers, to ensure full compatibility between Microsoft's Web Services implementation and that of Access. It's critical for interoperability that free and open technologies are available for anyone to pick and ensure connectivity. So what we've done here was such a landmark event that the head of the Connected Services Division inside Microsoft sent out a division-wide email in June when we achieved the significant milestone of full WS-Star compatibility between Microsoft's Web Services stack and Apache Access. This is a big deal. Finally, I don't want to worry. This is something we have to take one step at a time. The first steps that I took were with the Samba team, again with Jeremy Nelson and Andrew Tridgell, after several months of technical collaboration. Last October, we observed an opportunity to take specifications and guarantees over specifications, elimination of copyright and trademark requirements on CIFS and SMB, and to be able to build those specification licensing practices in a way that endorsed how Samba engineers already work today. So for example, if I use your specifications and I have a packet format, what if I take that packet and I put it in ASCII graphics as comments within my source code? Can I do that, or is that a leak of intellectual property? That and 34 other issues we solved over 6 weeks, culminating last December in a joint announcement that we had signed a definitive agreement to give the Samba team all the specifications they needed to build full interoperability with Microsoft's SMB implementations. We expanded that 3 months later into the interoperability principles, where we committed to publish all of our protocols, formats, and API specifications for all of our major products: Windows, Office, SharePoint, SQL, Exchange, and Windows Server. We've delivered 3 tranches of those now, and like any product, those protocols, I believe, are an ongoing process, currently in 1.0. Finally, the open specification promise, and I'll take a moment on this because it was critical in the conversations with Andy Oliver again, who I'm grateful to for bringing up specific concerns that he raised, because I believe that many of you share them. Based on the specific legal language, it's impossible to determine the intent. So when you read the open specification promise, which is a broad, irrevocable commitment of patent rights for any use, commercial or non-commercial, any distribution, open source or closed source, and it's irrevocable. But it wasn't clear that we had a good understanding of what was going on in development. What about partial implementations? What about subsets? What about buggy implementations? Were those still covered? Our answer is an unambiguous yes, and today we have posted those statements to the Microsoft website, 425. So that's recent. But the biggest thing that's come up is contribution. Talk to me about contribution. I'm going to talk about 3 things. First of all, today we have contributed a patch to a leading PHP project called ADODB. ADODB is licensed in the LGPL and BSD licenses, and our patch contributes support for SQL Server's native PHP driver, which the SQL Server team has built currently in a community technology preview and available in September. Second, we've put over 100 protocols formally under the Microsoft Common Protocol Program into the OSP, again, to guarantee the rights and ability to use that software to use all of those protocols for the long term without concern. Additionally, working with the Ruby community to join Ruby Spec, an organization committed to building compliance testing software to ensure compatible implementations of Ruby, and also shipping the core Ruby libraries along with the Iron Ruby distribution from Microsoft. I'm being told that the time's up, but there's one more thing. I'd like to welcome my colleague Justin Ehrenkrantz onto the stage. Justin, will you please join me? How are you doing?
Hi. Hello.
So we have a big announcement today.
Yes, we do. I'm excited about it.
So the last time I saw Justin was in February when he and 11 other leading Apache developers came to Redmond to get technical support and information from programmers and program managers. So, Justin, what are we announcing today?
Well, today Apache Software Foundation is very happy to welcome Microsoft as a platinum sponsor of the Apache Software Foundation.
We think this opens up a new chapter in our relationship with the Apache Software Foundation. I've told you there's a range of technologies that we're committed to partnering on. This is something that is bigger. It's a sponsorship, it's an endorsement of the Apache way. Justin, what's this going to let the Apache Software Foundation do? What are you going to do with this?
So we have about 1,600 committers or so. We have about 65 or so projects. And basically what we do with our thanks to our collection of sponsors that we have is allow us to provide the supporting infrastructure to our community so that they can focus on writing high quality code and make it available to everyone.
When I talked with Brian Bellendorf earlier this week about this, he was quite excited, and he said, every time I see great developers within the ASF spending their time on systems administration or other administrative tasks, it hurts my heart. I think this is a great opportunity to let developers do what they do best, and it's a privilege, and we're honored to be able to be your sponsor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. So as Niels Bohr said, it's hard to make predictions, especially about the future. But I believe that as humans, we believe that we can create the future through promises to each other. I'm going to offer you, in closing, a few promises. I will engage openly and honestly with you every time. I believe that through the work that I've done with some of the people that I mentioned before and the guidance and counseling of a certain open source diva, Denise Cooper, I've built some core practices here. I'm also dedicated to having the tough conversations. In finding a way forward with Samba, we had to deal with tough issues that nobody particularly wanted to talk about around patents. But we got through them, and we found a great way forward. We found ways to take care of everybody's rights and take care of everyone's concerns. But that can only be done if we drive all the way down to the bottom and figure out what we can do. And finally, I promise to continue to be this community's advocate within the Microsoft Corporation, because I believe that we will solve the next generation of technology challenges by participating and contributing together. Thank you very much for your time.